Hey there, this is Christine. Thanks for tuning into my Mostly Keto Kitchen today. So today what I'd like to do is to explain what carbs have to do with ketones. So I've spent many of the past videos talking about carbohydrates. And so specifically we looked at glucose and how that's what starch is. We looked at sucrose and that's what sugar, like table sugar is. And we talked about how the fructose part of the sucrose has some pretty detrimental effects in terms of blood glucose levels and serum insulin levels. And we also talked about fiber. So those are kind of the three main categories for carbohydrates. So now what I would like to do is relate the carbohydrates to ketosis. So that is the production of ketones. And why I want to tell you about this is because making ketones is a perfectly normal process. That is something that humans have been doing for millennia, right? Or millions of years as we've been developing. Ketosis is a totally normal thing to do. However, we've got so many carbs in our diets that we rarely get to the point that we make ketone bodies. And so I'm going to try to make that connection between the ketones and the carbs. Okay, so I've got three different types of cells that I'm showing up here. We've got muscle cells over here, liver cells, and then I've got fat cells. And really the crux of it is what I've written here in purple. A low-carb diet depletes glycogen levels to a point that the liver starts making glucose. Okay, so just take a moment to think about that. Yeah, low-carb diet, so if you're not taking in a lot of carbs, so that means your glucose and fructose levels are going to be low, that's going to deplete glycogen. Glycogen are these funny little purpley things that I've drawn up here. Glycogen is how we store glucose. Our livers do this, and our muscles do this. And that just gives us, it's a way to store glucose. And it's important. It's not a lot of calories, but it's good. And that's actually what we often use when we do some kind of a burst. You know, we're pulling glycogen or glucose is off of the glycogen, and our bodies are using that. And that's part of this fail-proof mechanism that we have to make sure that we always have enough glucose in our blood system, because if our blood glucose levels get down and we don't eat right away, then our bodies are just going to start pulling some glucoses off of the glycogen. Now, what happens with a low-carb diet is that we're going to keep pulling those glucoses off, right? If you're not eating them, then your body's going to start using its storage. So as we deplete the glycogen level, and it gets lower and lower, and it gets smaller and smaller, then that's when our body, our liver, is going to start making glucose. And that happens, the process is called gluconeogenesis. So sugar new make is what that is, okay? So how does your body do that? Well, it does it in multiple ways, but the one that I want to focus on right now has to do with using your fat cells. And so that's what we have over here, this nice blobby yellow guy. That is a fat cell. In it, it has a triglyceride. Remember, that's kind of like this E-shaped thing. So that triglyceride, if we split it into two parts, we've got this part that looks kind of like a band, and then we've got these little chains. So the chains are the fatty acids, and the band part here is what we call the glycerol backbone. And there's just 3 carbons in it. Well, those 3 carbons and another 3 carbons get together, and that makes 6 carbons, and that's what makes a glucose. So this is one of the ways that our liver takes fat and then makes sugar from it, right? And then that goes into the bloodstream, and it keeps us at that sort of 1 teaspoon per, your blood system, 1 teaspoon level that we've been talking about in some of the videos. All right, well, so then what happens to the fatty acids? Well, then that's when they get turned into ketones. And the ketones are then going to go all throughout the body, and your cells can use ketones. And so your brain likes them, your heart likes them, all throughout your body, you're going to be able to use those ketones. So it's kind of like just a backup. I mean, it's not necessarily even backup, but it's just an alternate system. If you don't have a lot of carb, then you can make ketones. And yes, we need this. We evolved with this, because remember, there were times when all there was just some antelope to munch on, and that's all you had. You weren't getting many carbs, and so your body had to make carbs, and it also made ketones in order to, generate energy for the body. So that is the connection between carbs and ketones. So in future videos, I do want to address some of the fears that there are around making ketones. So there's a thing called ketoacidosis, which is very serious. And so in the next video, I'm going to look at when that happens and why it is something that people who have normal insulin don't have to worry about it. All right. Thanks so much for listening.